Hi everyone and welcome to another YouTube video. This is the Apostate Prophet. Before I begin, I want to answer the question where my last video went that I released on Wednesday, which was about the sun sinking in a muddy spring according to the Quran. Some might have seen it already. This appears on the YouTube video if you go on it. It says that the video has been taken down due to a copyright claim by Johans Media. Guess what? Johans Media doesn't exist. And the email address associated with the claimant, with the false claimant, is literally something like spread the Islam with AJ something something. So a terrorist made a copyright claim and made it look legitimate, and YouTube, without investigating it properly, took my video down. Well, the terrorists might think that he has achieved something right now. Such terrorists who can't argue with you, use their tribal instincts and think that Islam is their identity and their honor, they can't argue with you, so they want to shut you down in ways that they are not even allowed to go. Of course this will have consequences. Well, if you make a false copyright claim, if you use that button and actually go through that legal procedure, then you commit a crime. Of course I'm suing them, and of course their false copyright claim here on YouTube has consequences for them. Today's topic, which I mentioned already in my former video, which I will upload again in future, is that Islam treats women beautifully. Islam, as everyone knows, is a totally women-loving religion, the most women-loving religion. It even has an entire chapter called Nisa, which translates to women, for women. Nice, right? Some people in Western societies, such as America or Australia, might tell you that Islam is totally compatible with feminist ideas, or even that it is the most feminist religion. The truth, of course, is the opposite. We will be talking about the obvious. Islam hates and oppresses women. It does so in its fundamental scriptures, the Quran and the Hadith. It did so throughout its entire history, from Muhammad till the 21st century, and it is still doing so today. I chose this topic because this weekend, as many already know, is the Women's March 2018. From our experiences from last year, from the Women's March in 2017 after Trump became president, we can tell that this Women's March will also be a bit weird, that the hijab advocacy will be made, that people on the left will be aligning themselves with Islamists, with speakers for the hijab, with people who think hijab is totally freedom and not oppressive at all, and that Islam is actually totally nice, and that Christianity is even worse, and that the white people are even worse. That's why I chose this video. In order to understand how Islam treats women, we can look at history, but before we do that, we can look at Islamic scriptures. We can look at the Quran, and we can look at what Hadith say. I will begin first with the Quran. One of the most controversial things in the Quran can be found in chapter 4 of the Quran, in verse 34. In verse 34 of the 4th chapter called Women, the Quran actually tells men, husbands, to beat their wives. It says, men are in charge of women by right of what Allah has given one over the other and what they spend for maintenance from their wealth. So righteous women are devoutly obedient, guarding in the husband's absence what Allah would have them guard. But those wives from whom you fear arrogance, first advise them, then if they persist, forsake them in bed, and finally strike them. But if they obey you once more, seek no means against them. Indeed, Allah is ever exalted and grand. We see two things that are here totally incompatible with our feminist heroes in the West. Wife beating, and that women have to stay at home, and men are in charge of women. Tell that to a feminist and she will probably beat you up or something. Another completely anti-feminist issue. Again in the 4th chapter, in verse 11, the Quran tells about inheritance, that girls or women deserve only half of the share that men or boys get from the inheritance, because women are only worth half as much as men. The Quran also advocates sex slavery. Again in the 4th chapter, this time in verse 24. The verse begins with the words, and also prohibited to you are all married women, except those your right hands possess. This is the decree of Allah upon you. The Quran talks here about the people you can or can't have sex with. It clearly says here in the first part of this verse that you are not allowed to have sex with married women, but you are allowed to have sex with married women that your right hands possess, which refers to sex slaves, women that were captured in war and have husbands already. This verse is very clear, and it is also supported by a hadith, which tells the exact same thing, and it even tells the backstory of this whole thing. But I will come to that later in the part where we talk about hadith. In another part of the Quran, this time in chapter 2, verse 223, it says that your wives are a place of sowing of seed for you. So come to your place of cultivation, however you wish, and put forth righteousness for yourselves. So women are your fields. Women are your fields, approach them however you want, and plant your seeds on your women however you want. Very weird language. Tell that to a feminist today. Another verse, the second chapter in the Quran, verse 228. The verse clearly tells us that men are a degree above women. And the addition by translators doesn't make it better. It says in responsibility and authority. Tell that to a feminist. That's all that I have to say about the Quran. Let's go to the next thing and let's talk about hadith, which is even worse. I want to begin with my favorite hadith about women. In this hadith, it says, "Isn't the witness of a woman equal to half of that of a man?" The women said yes. He, the Prophet, said, "This is because of the deficiency of a woman's mind." This is a Sahih Hadith by Muhammad. He said this, and this is directly related to the Quran verse 282 that we read a few minutes ago. Muhammad actually says that women are deficient in intelligence. I'm not arguing against this, I'm just saying... I'm just kidding. Another hadith tells us a little funny story in which Muhammad saw apparently an attractive woman or something outside, and then he decided to go to his wife Zainab and had sexual intercourse with her. So he was suddenly horny and went to his wife and had sex with her. He then went to his companions and told them, "The woman advances and retires in the shape of a devil. So when one of you sees a woman, he should come to his wife, for that will repel what he feels in his heart." It's a bit awkward. Yeah, it's awkward. So Muhammad sees a woman outside and feels this urge to have sex with his wife, goes home to his wife, has sex with her, and then goes out and tells to his companions that women come in the shape of a devil. Understandable. In another hadith by Sahih Bukhari, again a quote of Muhammad, he says that women are like a rib. If you straighten her, she will break. So if you want to get benefit from her, do so while she still has some crookedness. This one hadith is very important. The following hadith tells us that a wife always has to have sex with her husband if the husband wants to have sex. I will read it to you. Decide for yourselves. Allah's Messenger said, "If a husband calls his wife to his bed, that is, to have sexual relation, and she refuses and causes him to sleep in anger, the angels will curse her till morning." Let that sink in for a second. Muhammad is the holy prophet of Islam and speaks to his people and says that his words are a guide for humankind forever. And he tells them that if a husband wants to have sex with his wives, the wives have to submit to that will. Otherwise, they will be cursed until the morning by angels. Dear feminists, if you want to be a Muslim woman, and you have a husband, then you have to have sex with your husband whenever he desires to have sex with you. Marital rape is not a thing in Islam. It doesn't exist. In another hadith, in the following hadith, a very nice hadith for our feminist friends, Muhammad says something shocking. He says that if Allah had allowed him, he would have arranged that women worship their husbands. I will read you the hadith now. When Mu'adh bin Jabal came from Sham, he prostrated to the Prophet, who said, "What is this, O Mu'adh?" He said, "I went to Sham and saw them prostrating to their bishops and patricians, and I wanted to do that for you. The Messenger of Allah said, "Do not do that. If I were to command anyone to prostrate to anyone other than Allah, I would have commanded women to prostrate to their husbands." By the one in whose hand is the soul of Muhammad, no woman can fulfill her duty towards Allah until she fulfills her duty toward her husband. If he asks her for intimacy, and even if she is on her camel saddle, she should not refuse. I will repeat this one part again. It says, "I would have commanded women to prostrate to their husbands." Dear feminists, let that sink in. Remember I told you about the Quran verse, where Allah, the author of the Quran, allows men to have sex with sex slaves, captives of war, with women who are already married to non-Muslims. Here is the related hadith. The Apostle of Allah sent a military expedition to Autas on the occasion of the Battle of Hunain. They met their enemy and fought with them. They defeated them and took them captives. Some of the companions of Apostle of Allah were reluctant to have relations with the female captives because of their pagan husbands. So Allah the Exalted sent down the Quran verse, "And all married women are forbidden unto you, save those captives whom your right hand possesses." This is to say that they are lawful for them when they complete their waiting period. Yes, this hadith, related to the Quran verse, chapter 4, verse 24, allows Muslim men to take female captives in war, female captives who already have pagan husbands, and allows men to have sex with those female captives. In another hadith that I like very much, Muhammad basically hears news from Persia that they have a female ruler now, and he makes a commentary on it and says that never will succeed such a nation as makes a woman their ruler. Well, that can be kind of confirmed today, but still, misogyny in Islam. In another clear hadith, it also says that Muhammad gave men permission to beat their wives. And afterwards, many women came to complain to Muhammad about how their husbands beat them. But Muhammad didn't say much about it, except that they are not the best of you. It just goes on like this. Muhammad says that women should stay at home, that they should be silent and modest, that they should be covering up, that they should worship their husbands and have always sex with them when they want. But Islam is the most feminist religion. We can also go on and look at the Islamic world. We can see how the Islamic world treats women. Very interesting. One of the things that I always have in my mind is that UNICEF made a study, a survey in countries about the status of children and women. In Afghanistan, UNICEF found out that 92% of women in Afghanistan, I repeat, 92% of women in Afghanistan, think that a man is justified in beating his wives. For several reasons, like burning the food, leaving the house without permission, arguing and answering, and so on. The same study has been made in Sudan, where 47% of women agree that a husband can beat his wife, and more men, the majority of men, agree with the same. In Balochistan, one province of Pakistan, one of the biggest, 62% of women agree that a husband is justified in beating his wife. The study was also done later in other provinces of Pakistan, but didn't include the same question. In Iraq, more than 51% of women agree that a husband can beat his wife and is justified to do so. The study has been made only in several countries. In many other countries where the study has been made, the same question wasn't asked, unfortunately. I wouldn't be much surprised to see the same results. If we go on and look at my favorite source, Pew Research, we can see in a study that was made in 2013 following information about the Muslim world. A study was made in many countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Tunisia, Tajikistan, and so on. And the question was asked if a wife must always obey her husband. You can see the graphic here. The vast majority of Muslims agree that a wife must always obey her husband. The situation is only different in several countries like Kosovo, Albania, Bosnia, and in all others that were surveyed, the majority agrees that a woman must always obey her husband. In another question, again in the same survey, about whether sons and daughters should have equal inheritance rights, we see that in many countries, people think they shouldn't have the same rights. In some other countries, in more moderate ones, like Turkey or Bosnia or Kosovo or Indonesia in this case, people say they should have equal rights. Here's another graphic. I'm including this one because in America, people treat this as a women's rights issue. They pretend that the West, the Western white man, is always the bad one, and they align themselves with Muslims. Let's see what the Muslim world says about this. In this graphic, we see the percentage of Muslims who say that abortion is morally wrong. The vast, overwhelming majority of Muslims says it is morally absolutely wrong. Even in countries like Turkey, 7% only say it is acceptable. In another graphic, we see again of those Muslims who were surveyed, that many, the majority of those surveyed here, say that polygamy, in which case polygamy refers only to men having multiple wives, is morally acceptable. In other more moderate Western influenced countries, they say it's wrong. There is so much more to talk about, like honor killings, that in Pakistan only 40% of people think that it is not justified to honor kill people, especially if women committed the offense. Or in Iraq, the same number, even worse. But let's stop it here and let me show you one final thing, how the West compares to the Islamic world in gender equality. Here is a map from 2013. It's the Gender Gap Index, which shows gender equality or inequality on a map. Let's compare the West to the Islamic world. As we see, the West is pretty green. And as we also see, the Islamic world is pretty red and dark red. And let's show this to all those people who want to shut down criticism of Islam and the Islamic world. Let's show this to all those people who pretend like there is a women's rights issue in the West and make up something called the patriarchy, but completely ignore the whole problem in the Islamic world. People like Linda Sarsour or her allies, people who are similar to her, people who are very significant in women's rights issues in the West. But they will never make a single word about how women are treated like crap in the Islamic world, among Muslims in the West, in the Islamic world, and in Islam, because Islam tells people to treat women like that. Then they come with responses like, women might be treated badly in other parts of the world, but we are here in the West. We have to talk about these issues. We have no time to concentrate on things that happen in Saudi Arabia. But the same people are the first to cry out when something happens in Israel. They are the first to say stupid things like that supporting Palestine is also a feminist issue, and that those people who are Zionists and who support Israel are not real feminists. That's an actual Linda Sarsour quote. Incredible. I want to give you two sources that you can go through. Both are on Wiki Islam. Wiki Islam is run by ex-Muslims of North America. The links are below in the description. You can check there what the Quran says about women. You can see what the Quran, the Hadith, and the scholars say about wife beating. Just read it through and tell me one more time how Islam is not a problem. Don't get me wrong, if feminists or any other women's rights supporters are watching this, feminism was a totally justified and useful and the right thing to do and fight for. But today, many people, such as Linda Sarsour, have hijacked the whole feminist idea and turned it into a big pile of nonsense. And they turned it into intersectionality and took even Muslims into their fight. And fight for Islam against people who criticize Islam. If there is a bigger threat to women right now in the world than Trump, then it's Islam. Islam is a danger to women. Islam is a danger to homosexuals, to Jews, to minorities, to our freedom, to freedom of speech, to all our values. Don't defend Islam. Don't protect it. Islam hates women and Islam oppresses women. In the Islamic world, many people can, if they are honest, tell you that they are beaten into being modest and beaten into wearing the hijab. Many ex-Muslims will also tell you that they were beaten by their families and forced by their families to wear the hijab. The hijab is not freedom, it's not empowering. It is an oppressive tool. It is a tool for oppressors to control women. But that's another issue for another day. Many also want to tell you that women had equality in the Islamic world much longer before women in the West. That's totally ridiculous, but there was a traveler called Ibn Battuta in the Islamic history who made very nice observances, and he basically sees women in Turkey, in Anatolia back then, and makes remarks about how women back then in Anatolia were much freer than in the Islamic world, almost as free and respected as in Europe and among non-Muslim Christians. Must be an Islamophobe from the 14th century. We will see what the Women's March will bring this weekend, and I am almost sure that I will release some commentary on Monday about the whole issue, about the Women's March. Thank you for watching. You can follow me for updates on social media. I'm very active on Instagram and kind of active on Twitter. You can also support me on Patreon. I need your support because I want to focus on this, on criticizing Islam solely. Let's expose Islam for what it is, a danger to humanity. I'm also a writer on Geller Report, thanks to Pamela Geller. You can read my articles there. There will be more in future. I will see you again in a controversial video next week. Have a good weekend and stay away from Islam.